Sega's Comix Zone on Genesis, released in 1995. It's unbelievable how many years it's been. Hell, almost 20 at that no less, since this underrated yet hard-as-balls game has been gracing us. Oh my god, it's like I'm traveling in a friggin' time machine. Almost 20 years. Can you believe it? Gotta love that Sega logo. Alright, title screen. Seems promising enough even after close to 2 decades. So the story is set in the present-day Big Apple, where a freelance starving artist and hard rocker by the name of Sketch Turner is working on his latest creation inspired by his own imaginations, namely his dreams and nightmares, no less. When suddenly, lightning strikes upon one of his panels, and from within appears its main antagonist, namely Mortis, a powerful mutant who makes even Dimitri from Darkstalkers and Faust from Guilty Gear look like the wet bandits from Home Alone, who's hell-bent on ending our main hero's life in more ways than one. How, you might ask? By warping his ass into his own motherfucking work, composed of a half-ruined post-apocalyptic world upon which Mortis has laid serious waste. Now Sketch is hell-bent on saving it by fighting his way the hell out, page after page, panel after panel, under the command of a super hot and feisty yet straight-laced general, Alyssa Cyan. So the basic gameplay controls here are as follows. It's much more than just your standard beat-em-up slash platformer hybrid, set in the intertwined panels and pages of a comic book, hence the title, obviously. There are 3 stages in the entire game. Each stage is 2 pages in length, and can be very fierce and relentless if you're not aware of your tactics. Your basic buttons include not just using your D-pad to move Sketch around, pick items up, warp to different panels. They also involve, depending on which type of controller you've got plugged in, and or the configuration type you've set beforehand. A to attack enemies and barricades, the latter case of which takes away certain parts of your energy. Pull switches and or use one of the 3 selected items at the top right corner of the screen. B's to jump, especially on pipes and ledges, and C to pick out 1 of your 3 items to use. And if you have a 6 button pad, X, Y, and Z allow Sketch to use one of the 3 corresponding items depending on which button you've picked. X, Y, and Z are items 1, 2, and 3 respectively. Sketch's pet, Roadkill, appears at certain points in order to assist Sketch in digging up underlying secrets, and even using certain parts of the environment to their advantage. He's even suitable enough for wiping out certain enemies. Pikachu, Splinter, Fievel, Jerry, and Sniffles, eat your goddamn rodent hearts out. Other power-ups and weapons include a jar of iced tea to refill Sketch's health, which I highly suggest saving for even the most critical moments. A superhero fist allowing Sketch to morph into his alter ego, raising all kinds of hell. A knife and even grenades and a round of TNT. And don't even get me started with that mystery item. Sometimes it can be one of the aforementioned weapons and or power-ups. Or hell, a goddamn booby trap which will more than likely hand your ass to you in a jungle gym. Now those items can be very fucking handy, especially when it comes to boss battles. Sketch's range of attacks include not only his traditional punches and kicks, he can uppercut using up and attack, perform a power tackle using back forward attack, or even a devastating Shaolin kick using down up attack. You can even tear off a chunk of the page and make a paper airplane out of it, which turns out to be very effective against certain enemies and hazards. Now be forewarned that this technique drains a portion of Sketch's energy. And speaking of the energy meter, every time you take out certain hazards and barriers, including the metal cans of course, they'll wear your ass out in more ways than you think. Now concerning this game's troop of enemies, they range from half-mutant, half-droid to superhuman beings, and otherworldly creatures who will make hamburger helper out of your ass if you're not on your toes every second. And take note, Mortis will keep on drawing to summon each and every last one of them like it's its damn job. Like Gravis, Sketch's basic rival, a slow and retarded droid with slinky-like sentinel projectiles. Strigil, who is a masked assassin armed with crowbars who makes even Cabal from Mortal Kombat 3 and Cubone from Pokemon look like Finn and Jake from Adventure Time. Winged creeps, spawn mutants, cocoon crawlers, and even Styx, not to be confused with a hard rock band from the 70s, famous for Renegade and Sailing Away, a hydraulic staff-wielding monk, and finally Mongoria, the deadliest Amazonian threat since Tyrus Flare from Golden Axe. You thought I was gonna forget about the bosses? Think again. There's the big mama dragon from page 2 of scene 1 who will roast and claw the living shit out of you, but aside from attempting to thwart her with your bare hands, you can actually distract her into burning the metal can and lighting the flame right under her wretched ass massage. Master Kung Fung, who looks like the dyslexic bastard child of both forms of David Lopan from Big Trouble in Little China, minus the wheelchair of course, who will leave your ass reeling with his beyond compare mystical powers. And even Mortis himself, of course I'll leave that up to you because his intentions and appearance pretty much speak for themselves. At the end of each stage, should you survive each ruthless journey, your progress meter goes up in between depending on how many kills you've made, items you've racked up, and so forth. All in all, even after all these years, though the basic gameplay concept is fairly straightforward, the controls, though somewhat intricate, are very receptive, even for a close to 20-year-old platformer slash beat-em-up hybrid. Considering how this game's not only been criticized for its length and or its release time in said cases, not only is the game too short, this was also out when both PS1 and Saturn hit the scene if not long before. But also, yep, you guessed it, its ineffably chaotic and paranoid-ass difficulty setting. As inexplicably hard as this game tends to be, it's at least compliant for the player to get acquainted with its gameplay routine. However, as mentioned before, most of Sketch's adversaries and pain-in-the-balls boundaries will mow down every last pint of your life force. You only get one life, and absolutely no continues, except in the very last stage, of course. What the fuck?! But let's not hold our breath here, as Comix Zone's challenge is hard yet fair, just like Gunnery Sergeant Hartman from Full Metal Jacket. For a Genesis game released as late as '95, especially, as mentioned before, while the birth of the 64-bit generation was in bloom, even after all those years, I found Comix Zone's overall graphical presentation to be far beyond hallucinatory. In other words, kick-ass, gnarly, eye-pleasing, the shit, all that jazz. Most of the character designs and animations were very ambitious for its day. Same story with the coincidental stage backgrounds and settings. Hell, they even put my own artwork to absolute fucking shame! And how could I possibly forget about those random onomatopoeias that pop up every time you bring an enemy to its knees? Not to mention the random yet appropriate effects for every situation Turner is thrown in. In fact, the overall concept is actually based on an earlier attempt devised by Peter Morowite for Sega, Joe Pencil Trapped in the Comix Zone. Composed by Howard Drawson of Sonic Spinball, Sonic & Knuckles, The Ooze, Die Hard Arcade, the Vigilante 8 series, Namco Bandai's Splatterhouse remake, and The Man with the Iron Fist and Aquila and the Bee fame. Speaking of which, Drawson's been collaborating with various artists. The music is flat out wicked, with the most bodaciously historic tunes you've ever heard. And don't even get me started on those digitized voice samples of not only Sketch himself, but most of the supporting characters and adversaries every time they make their move on him. Hell, the majority of the dialogue they blurt out is expressed visually, like obviously, in a freaking comic book. In terms of replayability, due to the alternating strategies you utilize, in terms of the choices of weapons Sketch picks, or the branching paths he takes in between panels, the lasting appeal and replay value of Comix Zone is so damn high, even if you imagined every skyscraper in the world stacked together, Taipei 101, the World Trade Center, the Burj Khalifa in Dubai, the Empire State Building, John Hancock, Prudential, what have you. They wouldn't even match the immeasurable height that is this game's. Well, you get the drift. Therefore, what's my final verdict here? What this game boils down to, a mind-numbing yet uplifting thrill ride, complete with eye-pleasing visuals and a bitchin' soundtrack. It's no wonder that it's been almost 20 fucking years since this game has been gracing as well as overwhelmed us through and through. Then again, if you're in the mood for a panel-by-panel, balls-to-the-wall platforming beat-em-up like no other, I highly recommend the crap out of Comix Zone. So what the hell are you waiting for? The release of the next Avengers movie? Sniff it the hell out already. I guarantee you there will be no shred of lament in doing so. And until then, this is the Hardcore Retro God signing off.